lot of horror movies are scary, but today we're gonna list 10 horror films that are so crazy, weird, violent, and unhinged they can only be described as absolutely maniacal. For when you want to kick your next movie night up a notch, these are the films. My name is Daniel with the Cobwebs channel, and let's get started. Cherry Falls from 2000. This is a high school set teen slasher movie that you could say is part of the post-Scream run of slasher films with Urban Legend, I Know What You Did Last Summer, but Cherry Falls stands apart by being the most messed up and audacious. So many other slasher movies make a cliche out of the killer killing the promiscuous teens, and the virgin is the only one who survives. But Cherry Falls has a killer who is specifically targeting virgins. It takes place in this small town of Cherry Falls where high schoolers are getting picked off one by one, and that is the common link between them. It stars the late great Brittany Murphy as a young girl who isn't sure if she wants to go all the way with her boyfriend or not, and her dad is actually played by Michael Biehn. Great to see him here. He plays the sheriff, and when he reveals to the town that all of the victims are virgins, I mean, you can only imagine what the teenagers decide to do to make sure that they don't get killed. It's real weird and messed up. The kill scenes are very violent and grisly. It almost seems like the filmmakers are trying to chase away any I Know What You Did Last Summer fans. No, this isn't for you. This one is for the sickos. There's one scene that stands out to me that's just so glorious, I have to tell you about it, where because the teenagers want to do something to take them off the victims list, they have this big sex party. The killer comes through and just starts slashing their way through an orgy. A lot of people gave the new Texas Chainsaw Massacre movie a lot of credit for Leatherface slashing through an entire bus full of dumb teens or college students or whatever they were. Here it's actually an orgy. It's so insane. Cherry Falls is a bold and demented movie, but I actually think it's a lot of fun. It's actually got a pretty solid mystery and killer reveal, and Brittany Murphy is just always great. We lost her way too soon, but it's wonderful to see her in this. She's actually really good. Inside from 2007, which is about a pregnant woman who is terrorized in her house on Christmas Eve by a mysterious blood-soaked intruder determined to take her unborn baby. Boy, if that is not a deranged, maniacal movie premise, I don't know what is. Pitting a pregnant woman who's about to have the baby the next day, she is that pregnant, against someone who wants to take some scissors, chop her up, and take that kid. That is nuts. This is a French film in the French Extremity movement, and for a long time it's been one of those movies that I was too scared to watch. I've been pretty open on this channel about the fact that I'm not somebody who will just watch anything. There are certain things that I don't want to see, but there are also certain things that I want to watch it one day, but I'm nervous. I don't know if I want to put myself through that right now. Inside was one of those, and I'm proud of myself. I watched it, and I was okay, guys. I was totally fine with this movie, even though it is deliriously demented. Oh my God, this movie is so violent. It is brutal. It is so bloody. I almost can't believe how much blood is on screen here. The main character, while certainly not being portrayed as a perfect person in the lead up to things, is very, very sympathetic. I mean, how can she not be? You absolutely want her to get out of this thing. The killer is horrifying. She is so intimidating and scary and deranged. And because the main character can't get killed off too soon, because then there wouldn't be a movie, more and more characters keep showing up at the house for different reasons and to be cannon fodder for our killer, and boy, she makes full use out of them. My one big issue I do have with the movie is there are some really stupid character decisions in here, and normally I'm not the kind of person to talk about that with horror movies because I always say, you don't know how you're going to react when you're in a situation like this, but this movie kind of goes beyond that in different ways, and it just comes across as lazy screenwriting to me, so that's a bummer. But I am glad we have this movie. I am glad it is as insane as it is, and especially in the third act. Well, through most of the movie, I was like, it's really violent, but I'm okay with this. By the third act, there are some of the most grotesque and images I've ever seen. Some of them in actually a really cool way where I'm like, wow, that is amazing imagery. Some of them in that's really sick. I don't ever want to see that again. But I do think Inside is quite good, and honestly, I'm just proud of myself that I watched it.
They're going to be True start of a new race, entirely created by me.
Flesh for Frankenstein from 1973. This is the classic story from Mary Shelley. Well, actually, it's not. It's super, super different. See, you might not expect a Frankenstein movie to be on this list because, while the Frankenstein story is pretty insane by definition, it's about chopping up body parts, stitching them together to create a living corpse. But it's such a classic story, it's so well known, it doesn't hit us that way anymore, I don't think. But this is a version of the story that does because of just how much more deranged and demented it makes it. It stars Udo Kier as Baron Frankenstein, who's obsessively trying to create both a male and female person so they can breed together to create a perfect race. This is actually one that I own on 4K in this crazy fancy edition from Vinegar Syndrome. Holy cow, this movie is insane. It's actually a little bit of a black comedy, though I didn't find it particularly funny, just gross. It goes so far to be as demented as possible. The gore is actually amazing, and while all Frankenstein movies are about chopping up body parts, stitching them together, a lot of them don't show that to you. This movie shows you like everything. Like, you watch the process of chopping off limbs, sewing them. It's so gross. You see these mangled body parts all over the place in this, frankly, beautiful laboratory. Otherwise, the sets are just gorgeous in this film. I really just can't say enough about how fantastic and maniacal the gore is here. Like, there is a decapitation scene that is truly glorious. Like, I think the first time I saw this, I actually stood up in my basement, like, wanted to cheer. Like, it's so awesome. The movie around it, I don't think is great. Like, the whole idea of making the creatures breed is really sick and gross, but it never really goes anywhere, never really pays off. But the performances are so over the top. They are truly something to behold. There's a line of dialogue in here delivered by Udo Kier about a gallbladder, and you will never hear a better line of dialogue in your life about a gallbladder. It's not truly great, and it's certainly not for everybody, but if you want a movie tonight that's gonna trigger your gag reflex, Flesh for Frankenstein will make you go, whoa.
Whiskey for the pain.
Together from 2025. This is a brand new horror film that just hit theaters, and it stars Dave Franco and Alison Brie. And I was really excited to see another horror film with them because Dave Franco directed The Rental from a few years ago that Alison Brie was also in, which is probably one of my favorite horror films of this decade so far. I think it's fantastic. So Together kind of felt like their follow-up, even though it's not actually from Dave Franco. It's written and directed by Michael Shanks. And I loved the basic premise of this. It's about them as a 30-something couple from the city who moved to the countryside, which is already putting a strain on their relationship, but they encounter a natural substance out in the woods that starts transforming their flesh, bringing them together. This is a body horror movie that really takes a metaphor of codependency in a relationship to the extreme by literally their flesh starting to become one. I knew that that created the opportunity for this to be a really weird and gross, unhinged body horror movie. Now, the character stuff here is actually fantastic. I love the dynamic between the couple. It rings so true, where the woman, Alison Brie, has a normal job as a teacher. She wants to move to the countryside. She wants to just have a basic normal life together, while he's this musician who wants to pursue his dreams, and it's kind of turning him into something of a man-child who's dependent on her, especially financially, because his musician dreams are not working out. And that's a dynamic that I'm starting to see more and more in the world today, where the women are just keeping normal jobs in offices and such, and they tend to be, these days now, higher educated, whereas men are pursuing dreams that are often unrealistic. It felt like very now commentary, very 2025, without this movie painting either party as the bad guy. They both feel very real, both likable in their own way. Dave Franco and Alison Brie are actually a married couple in real life, and real life couples are not always good at portraying that on screen, but these two really are. It rang so, so true. I actually thought this was one of the best horror films I've seen in recent times. about marriage. Even though the couple in the movie are not technically married, but they're basically married, it has a lot of interesting things to say. But I did love the horror. I love the body stuff going on. I did think this movie was gonna lean grosser, and I think some people talking about the movie are overplaying how disgusting it is. Like, it's not as disgusting as The Substance, not even close. But it is weird. There's some great effects. I really, really enjoy this movie. It's by far one of my favorite horror films of the year.
Try to encourage her to do something about her weight. Those pounds put a massive strain on her heart.
You and that Hamer trying to starve me to death, but you're not gonna do it!
Criminally Insane from 1975. An obese woman recently released from an insane asylum kills anyone who attempts to get her to stop eating. This is a super low budget, regionally shot 70s horror movie that I was impressed is actually quite good and very entertaining. I watched it on this recent Vinegar Syndrome Blu-ray, which I didn't even notice until I sat down to film this. It literally says the word maniacal right there on the cover. I picked it for this list, not even realize that. So it fits. It's objective. Nobody can deny it. Criminally Insane is a lot of fun. It's barely over an hour. It's about 62 minutes long. And it stars Priscilla Alden as this main character who is quite good here as a just completely deranged person with a very severe eating addiction that just, people keep popping up at the house trying to help her in some way, and she just keeps killing them. There are so many murder scenes here. This movie can't afford a lot of gore effects, so it's pretty much just a lot of blood, but it's super red paint looking blood like from a Hammer movie, which I just find to be a lot of fun. Something that I really appreciate in 70s exploitation is just weird dialogue, off-kilter characters, strange character interactions, and Criminally Insane has a lot of them. Like, her sister shows up, who's a really weird character. Then her sister's boyfriend shows up, who is so hilariously horrible. Like, he's a horrible guy, but it is honestly so funny, like in a really dark way. I found myself just cracking up at this guy. I think this movie kind of works as a black comedy. It's silly, it's ridiculous, it's completely maniacal. I really enjoyed it.
I cannot say where I am, but I can say that I'm here on my own free will. Anything that happens inside Perdition is done with my full consent.
Extremity from 2018. A horror subgenre that's starting to get popular these days are haunted house horror movies. And I don't mean ghosts, I mean haunted house attractions in October where people go to have fun for Halloween and people end up getting killed inside of them. Extremity is kind of like that, but it is about an extreme haunted house. If you don't know anything about this, there's actually this really interesting documentary made about them called Haunters, The Art of the Scare. It is a severely disturbing documentary, but these are haunted house attractions that people can sign a waiver, go into willingly, and basically get psychologically tortured, sometimes even physically tortured, because they get some kind of catharsis out of it. It's really scary to me. I find it very, very disturbing. And Extremity is the only fictional movie that I have seen that's about that kind of idea. It's about a very disturbed young woman who signs the waiver, goes in willingly to this extreme haunted house, and she turns out to be the wrong kind of person to go in there, if there even is a right person to go in there, and ends up being a force to be reckoned with inside this place for these truly demented workers that work in there. It's scary. It's disturbing. But while I'm not the biggest fan of that kind of horror movie a lot of the time, this is one I've actually seen multiple times, and I actually think it's really good. I think it's really well made. I think the character arc the main character goes through is very interesting, and the actress is very good. It's got some truly frightening imagery, very scary masks that the workers in there wear, twisted situations, intense scenarios. It's actually directed by Anthony DiBlasi. A lot of people love him because of The Last Shift and Malum, but this is one that kind of got lost in the shuffle, and I really think more people, especially if they like his other work, should check this out.
He shall be shut up when it's I who am mad.
Mad Love from 1935. Now, some of you guys may be shocked that I would put an old black and white movie on here. Like, how deranged and maniacal can an old classic Hollywood movie possibly be? Well, the 1930s is definitely a very different time than the 40s and the 50s were. It was a little bit more of the Wild West, particularly in the early 30s. You could get away with a lot more. And I wanted to put this on for historical perspective. I think if you're talking about disturbing movies, insane maniacal films, you should pay homage to the early films that did this kind of thing and kind of try to put your head back in that time period and think how twisted are the ideas that this movie is presenting and how shocking was that for the time. But also, I think this is a genuinely fantastic movie. It stars Peter Lorre, who is such a major horror icon, as a mad doctor, a very respected doctor, but one who is completely insane. He's obsessively in love with this actress, played by Frances Drake, who is excellent here, and goes to see her play every single night where she gets tortured on stage. Not for real, fake tortured, but still, it's more than hinted that he is very sexually aroused by watching her get tortured. But when her husband, who's played by Colin Clive, Baron Frankenstein from the old Frankenstein movies, is in a train accident and he ruins his hands, and he's a famous concert pianist, Peter Lorre's Dr. Gogol is the only one who can save him by replacing his hands with the hands of a murderer. Mad Love is awesome. Peter Lorre's performance is absolutely deranged. He's legit scary, but super fun to watch here. I just love Peter Lorre. Everybody is great here. It's genuinely well shot, being actually directed by a famous cinematographer who actually shot Todd Browning's Dracula. Mad Love, especially for its time, is really sick, twisted, and deranged, but I still think today it's just a good movie.
Why the movie? Why is it so important to you?
Because people said it's the scariest thing they've ever seen.
The Hills Run Red.
The Hills Run Red. From 2009. This is a 2000 slasher film released by Dark Castle Entertainment with a great premise. I just love it. It's about this guy who's a massive horror fan who's obsessed with this lost slasher movie that was never released and supposedly was banned because of its absolutely extreme demented content. So he goes on this road trip quest to try to find this film, but he ends up finding the real killer from the movie, who's called Babyface. I'm really glad the 2000s is now a lot more respected for being a pretty good time for the slasher genre, because slashers got real twisted during this decade. They got real violent, messed up, and The Hills Run Red is one of the peak examples of that. This movie is demented. Like, it's crazy. Something that I've noticed is pretty popular on YouTube right now is doing videos about really sexually explicit movies and such, and The Hills Run Red fits in that. For me, it was like shockingly explicit, both in its violence and in its sexual content, which I know is going to make a lot of you guys run to this movie and watch it as soon as you can. It was direct to video, which I think made it a little bit easier for them to do whatever they wanted with the content and worry a lot less about censorship. And I do give a lot of respect to the look of the slasher killer here. We live in a time now where slasher characters are kind of looked at as like cozy, cuddly. Like, we love Freddy Krueger, Michael, Jason. You go to Spirit Halloween in October, you'll find literal plush dolls of all these characters. You'll even find a plush doll of Art the Clown. Like, people just love these characters. They're not really looked at as scary anymore. Babyface is one I don't think you would want a plush doll of. He looks gross. He looks disturbing. He is scary looking. And I appreciate that. That's a tough thing to do post like the 80s era, but they pulled it off here. The Hills Run Red is pretty extreme. It is absolutely maniacal, but I still think it's a lot of fun.
Adopting an older child is not an easy decision.
Orphan. From 2009. After losing their baby, a married couple adopts 9-year-old Esther, who may not be as innocent as she seems. Yes, I put two back-to-back Dark Castle movies from 2009 on here, and while The Hills Run Red was direct-to-video, Orphan was actually a pretty big movie for them, and it's got legit movie stars in here like Vera Farmiga and Peter Skarsgård. It's very well made, well directed by Jaume Collet-Serra. For a lot of it, it feels like a gaslighting thriller as Vera Farmiga starts figuring out more and more there is something wrong with this little girl they've adopted, and her husband doesn't believe her, so she's trying to uncover the mystery, what's going on with this kid. It just feels like this good, slick, mainstream movie, although there is some really twisted stuff in it. It's really the third act, when the movie reveals what it's really about, that this movie becomes for absolute maniacs. It is an insane twist. And I do feel comfortable calling out that there is a twist because it's very well known today. There was even recently released a prequel to this movie, which made it even more well known what it's about. But I actually saw this movie knowing what the twist was, because like I said, it's just such common knowledge. And it didn't hurt the movie much for me. I still really enjoyed it. The third act still hits really hard. The way it's delivered is still more sick and twisted than you're probably expecting. Orphan is a crazy film, but it's genuinely really well done, really well acted. It's basically an A-list blockbuster kind of horror movie that just happens to be way more unhinged than it ever should have gotten away with. But that's why it's so good.
I feel like something's gonna happen. And if I scratch the surface, there'll be something terrible underneath.
Society from 1989. This is about an upper-class high school student who discovers he may be shockingly different than the society that surrounds him. This is a classic 80s Brian Yuzna goop and goo horror movie. It's just so good, but it is for the sickos. So if you're part of that group, let's gather up. For a lot of the movie, it plays like a Hitchcockian conspiracy thriller as teenager played by Billy Warlock just tries to uncover the mystery of what is this conspiracy going on, or is he just paranoid? He is raised among all of the rich and powerful but doesn't feel a part of them, starts to discover there's something very sinister going on with them. Society is kind of like John Carpenter's They Live, where it's super on the nose about all of its class commentary, but it still does it really well. I think much because of just how bonkers insane it goes with the horror elements. Because if you're watching this movie for the first 2/3, like, okay, we're uncovering a mystery, there's some weird stuff happening, there's some very strange imagery peppered throughout, but you're just wondering, how much is this movie really going to pay off these ideas? The answer is all the way. Society is a movie that leaves nothing on the table. It is no holds barred, nothing held back. The third act of this film is one of the craziest things that's ever been committed to film, and I feel comfortable saying that. That sounds like a dramatic statement if you haven't seen Society, but I think if you have seen this movie, you're like, yeah, it's just bananas what happens. And that's why you've got to see it. It is one of the peak body horror movies, one of the grossest ever made, but it's really, like pretty much everything Brian Yuzna did, fun to watch. Before I go, I just want to send out a massive thank you to my patrons who truly make this channel possible. If anyone else wants to support me, there's always a link to my Patreon in the description below. And I want to give a special shout out to Greg Newmeyer, Chris Sloan, and Paulie D. You guys are the absolute best. If you're brave enough to check any of these out for yourself, I do have streaming recommendations right here on the screen, and if you'd rather, physical media links in the description, and using them does help support the channel. Let me know down in the comments below what are some other maniacal horror films that you recommend, and if you want to hang out with me more, click on the video on the screen. Thank you all so much for watching. Don't forget to enjoy yourselves today, have some fun, and I'll see you next time. Bye.